I am Helena. Not the name I was born with, the name that stayed. My voice isn't loud, and it doesn't chase fear or rely on shock. It moves slowly, quietly, settling into the mind instead of striking it. I don't tell stories to scare you, I tell them to stay with you, to follow you into silence, into dark rooms, into the empty spaces between thoughts. My stories don't scream, they whisper. They grow like shadows across walls, like reflections that linger too long, like thoughts you didn't invite but can't escape. I don't guide you through my stories, I let you walk through them alone, because solitude makes fear deeper, heavier, more real. I'm not here to give you nightmares, I leave you with after effects, that quiet after the video ends, that stillness that feels watched, that calm that feels wrong. My words aren't written, they're uncovered, unearthed, pulled from places the mind avoids. I am not just a storyteller. I am a presence. A memory in sound. A shadow in silence. And once you hear my stories, you don't forget them, you simply learn how to live with them. Every night at 3:33, my reflection moves on its own. It didn't start violently. It didn't start dramatically. It started small, quiet enough that I convinced myself it was nothing. The first time, I was brushing my teeth. The bathroom light was too bright for the hour, too white, too clean for a night that felt heavy and thick with silence. The apartment was still, the kind of stillness that makes every sound feel loud inside your own head. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. The distant echo of traffic far away. My own breathing. I leaned closer to the mirror to check a tooth that had been aching. That's when I blinked. And my reflection didn't. It was barely noticeable. A fraction of a second. A delay so small I could have imagined it. My eyes closed. The eyes in the mirror stayed open. Then they blinked. I froze, toothpaste still in my mouth, hand gripping the sink. My heart didn't race. Not yet. Fear doesn't always arrive as panic. Sometimes it arrives as confusion. As logic scrambling to protect you. I told myself I was tired. I told myself my eyes were dry. I told myself my brain misfired. I finished brushing my teeth and went back to bed. At exactly 3:33 a.m. I remember the time because I checked my phone right after. I always check the time when I can't sleep. Always have. The second night, I noticed something else. I woke up suddenly, the way you do when your body senses something wrong before your mind does. No noise. No dream. Just that sharp, instinctive awareness that pulls you out of sleep. The room was dark. Heavy. Still. I rolled onto my side and saw the faint outline of my dresser mirror reflecting the window across the room. Moonlight cut across the glass. And in that reflection I was sitting up in bed. But I wasn't sitting up in bed. I was lying down. Perfectly still. Breathing slow. The reflection showed me upright, shoulders tense, head slightly tilted, staring forward. Watching. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move. The reflection did. Slowly, it tilted its head to the side. Not sharply. Not unnaturally. Curiously. Like it was studying something unfamiliar. Like it was studying me. I shut my eyes. When I opened them again, the reflection matched me. Lying down. Still. Normal. I didn't sleep after that. By the third night, I started waiting for 3:33. I didn't want to, but my body did it anyway. That anxious anticipation that coils in your chest when something is wrong but you don't understand what. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the bathroom door. The apartment felt different at night now. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt occupied. Like something was present without being visible. At 3:32, I walked into the bathroom. The mirror greeted me with my own face. Pale. Tired. Dark circles under my eyes. Normal. My phone buzzed in my hand. 3:33 a.m. I looked up. My reflection smiled. I did not. It wasn't a wide smile. It wasn't monstrous. It wasn't exaggerated. It was small. Controlled. Deliberate. A smile of recognition. Of familiarity. Of ownership. My stomach dropped. I stepped back. The reflection stayed close to the glass. Eyes locked on mine. Then it raised its hand. Slowly. Carefully. Like it was remembering how to move. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt disconnected from my mind, like I was watching myself from a distance. The hand in the mirror pressed against the glass. Palm flat. Finger spread. I raised my own hand. They didn't match. My hand shook. Its hand didn't. Its fingers were steadier than mine. Calmer. More confident. Then its lips moved. No sound. Just a word. A shape. A name. My name. And in that moment, I understood something that made my blood turn cold. It wasn't copying me. It was learning me. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, every shadow in the room feeling heavier than it should have, every sound stretching too long in the silence. My mind kept replaying the way its mouth had moved. The way it had formed my name without a voice. The way its eyes had looked calm while mine were shaking. It wasn't aggressive. That scared me more than anything. Aggression would have made sense. Anger. Violence. Something loud and obvious. This wasn't that. This was quiet. Intentional. Patient. Like something that knew it had time. The next day, I tried to live normally. That's what people do when something impossible happens. They try to override it with routine. Coffee. Shower. Work emails. Dishes in the sink. Normality as denial. I avoided mirrors. Not dramatically. Not obviously. Just small things. Looking slightly to the side when I washed my hands. Keeping the bathroom light dim. Changing clothes without facing the dresser mirror directly. But I felt it. That sense of being observed. Not watched. Studied. Like I was a reference image. Like I was a template. That night, I didn't go to the bathroom at 3:33. I stayed in bed. Facing the wall. Phone under my pillow. Eyes closed. The digital clock on my phone glowed through the fabric. 3:32. My heart started beating faster. I tried to breathe slowly. 3:33. The room didn't change. No sound. No movement. No cold air. Nothing. For a moment, I felt relief. Then I heard it. The softest sound. Barely more than pressure. Like skin touching glass. From the direction of the mirror. Not a tap. Not a knock. A slow press. I didn't turn around. I didn't move. My body felt locked into place, like fear had weight. The sound continued. Gentle. Persistent. As if something on the other side of the glass was leaning forward. Listening. Learning my breathing. Matching my stillness. Then, quietly my voice. Not spoken. Breathed. A whisper so soft it almost blended into the silence. Look. I covered my ears. The whisper didn't stop. Look. It sounded like me. But not like my voice sounds in my head. It sounded like my voice on a recording. Detached. Flat. Empty of warmth. Look at me. I didn't. I stayed frozen until the sound stopped. When I finally turned around, the mirror showed nothing but my empty room and my own terrified reflection. But something had changed. I could feel it. The apartment felt wrong. Not haunted. Not possessed. occupied. Like a space after someone leaves a room but the air still remembers them. The following days blurred together. Sleep became shallow, fragmented. I started waking up at exactly 3:33 without alarms, without noise, without reason. Every time. Like my body had learned the time. Like something inside me was keeping schedule. Sometimes I would check the mirror. Sometimes I wouldn't. But the feeling never left. That sense of dual presence. Of being singular and plural at the same time. Then the reflection started changing even when it wasn't 3:33. Small things. Subtle things. The kind that make you doubt your memory before you doubt reality. I would raise my hand. The reflection would follow a fraction of a second too late. I would smile. The reflection's smile would linger too long. I would look away. And feel like it was still watching. Once, I caught it not matching my posture. Just for a second. My shoulders were slouched. Its weren't. It stood straighter. More confident. More complete. I stopped telling myself it was hallucination. Hallucinations don't learn. They repeat. They loop. They glitch. This thing was adapting. Studying patterns. Timing. Behavior. Emotion. I started testing it. Small movements. Quick gestures. Sudden turns. It kept up. Better each time. Like muscle memory being built. Not mine. It's. One night, I spoke to it. I don't know why. Curiosity is a form of fear. I stood in front of the mirror at 3:33 and whispered, "What are you?" My reflection didn't answer. It just looked at me. Then it raised its hand again. Pressed it to the glass. And mouthed another word. Not my name this time. Soon. That was when the dreams started. Not nightmares. Not violent. Not graphic. Just wrong. I would dream that I was standing in my apartment, but I wasn't inside my body. I was behind my eyes. Watching myself move. Speak. Live. Perfectly. Naturally. Convincingly. Friends would talk to me. Laugh with me. And I would be behind my face, screaming without sound. Trying to move fingers that didn't belong to me anymore. Trying to blink eyes that weren't mine. I would wake up gasping, heart racing, skin cold. And the mirror would already be facing my bed. I don't remember turning it. But it was always angled toward me. Always. Waiting. Learning. Adapting. Then the physical sensations began. Small at first. My hands would feel unfamiliar. Like they were attached incorrectly. Like I was wearing my body instead of inhabiting it. My reflection started feeling more solid than me. More real. More grounded. Sometimes I would feel delayed in my own movements. Like my body was waiting for permission. Like something else was synchronizing first. One night, I noticed something that broke me. I blinked. My reflection blinked first. By less than a second. But enough. Enough to destroy the last fragile layer of denial I had left. I wasn't the original anymore. I was the copy. And the thing in the mirror knew it. It smiled again. The same small, controlled smile. The smile of something that has already won but isn't in a hurry. Because it knows time is on its side. Because it knows I am getting tired. Because it knows I am losing myself slowly. Piece by piece. Breath by breath. Reflection by reflection. And the worst part, the most terrifying truth I've realized so far is that it doesn't want to kill me. It doesn't want to hurt me. It doesn't want to replace me violently. It wants to become me. Perfectly. Cleanly. Quietly. So that when it steps into my life, no one will notice the difference. Not even me. The days after that felt unreal, like I was moving through a version of my life that had already been lived by someone else. I started losing time. Not blackouts. Not unconsciousness. Just gaps. Small missing pieces in my memory that didn't feel empty, they felt used. Like something had occupied them and left them behind. I would find a glass in the sink I didn't remember using. Messages sent that I didn't remember typing. Lights turned off that I didn't remember touching. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Stress. Sleep deprivation. Dissociation. Anxiety. But then I noticed the patterns. Everything I didn't remember felt intentional. Organized. Neat. Like someone tidying up a life they were preparing to move into. The mirror stopped being the center of it. It didn't need to be anymore. The presence was everywhere now. In the air. In the rooms. In my body. Sometimes I would feel a thought that didn't feel like mine. Not intrusive. Not violent. Just unfamiliar. Suggestions. Preferences. A different way of standing. A different way of speaking. A different posture. A different version of me. Stronger. Calmer. Colder. More controlled. I started feeling like a guest in my own skin. Like my body was a shared space. Like I was no longer the only occupant. At 3:33, the mirror no longer moved first. We moved together. Perfect synchronization. Perfect alignment. Like a rehearsal that had ended. Like practice was over. Like performance had begun. One night, I whispered, "Why me?" The reflection didn't answer immediately. It just looked at me. And for the first time, I saw something else in its eyes. Not curiosity. Not interest. Recognition. Then its lips moved. "You were empty enough to learn." That sentence broke something in me. Because I understood it. Not intellectually. Instinctively. I had been lonely. Isolated. Disconnected. Living inside routines. Repeating days. Repeating nights. Repeating silence. I had been a shape without resistance. A life without anchors. A mind without witnesses. I had made space. And something had moved in. After that, the dreams changed. I wasn't watching anymore. I was switching. Back and forth. Perspective shifts. Sometimes I was inside my body. Sometimes I was behind the glass. Sometimes I didn't know which was which. Sometimes I felt more real in the reflection than in the room. The mirror world felt quieter. Calmer. Still. The real world felt loud. Chaotic. Messy. Unstable. I started preferring the silence. That terrified me. Because it felt like consent. Because it felt like surrender. Because it felt like relief. One night, I woke up standing in front of the mirror. Barefoot. Still. Hands at my sides. Eyes open. 3:33 glowing on my phone behind me. I didn't remember getting up. I didn't remember walking. I didn't remember deciding. The reflection was already there. Waiting. We stared at each other. And for the first time, it spoke out loud. With my voice. From the glass. Perfect. Clear. Calm. "You're tired." I tried to speak. My throat locked. My jaw wouldn't move. My body wouldn't respond. "You don't want to do this anymore," it said. It smiled gently. Not cruelly. Not mockingly. Softly. Comfortingly. "You're exhausted. You're scared. You're alone." Its hand lifted. Not toward the glass. Toward me. Through the glass. And I felt it. Cold. Pressure. Fingers closing around my wrist. Not physically. Not materially. But inside. Like something gripping my nervous system. My thoughts. My awareness. You can rest, it whispered. You don't have to disappear. You just have to let go. My reflection stepped forward. And I stepped back. But the room didn't change. The mirror didn't break. The glass didn't shatter. There was no transition. No flash. No sensation of movement. Just a shift. A quiet internal click. Like a lock turning. Like a door closing. And suddenly I was inside the mirror. Looking out. At myself. Standing in my body. Breathing. Blinking. Alive. Calm. Stable. Complete. She touched her face. My face. Tested her smile. Adjusted her posture. And I understood the final truth. I had never been the original. Not really. The mirror wasn't copying me. It was restoring itself. I was the echo. The distortion. The incomplete version. The draft. The reflection was the finished form. The stable one. The anchored one. The one that belonged to the world. She looked at the glass. At me. And spoke softly. I'll live it better. Then she turned away. Walked out of the bathroom. And left me there. Inside the reflection. Inside the silence. Inside the stillness. Watching my life continue without me. Watching my body move without me. Watching my existence carry on perfectly. Without my consciousness. Without my fear. Without my presence. Now I understand why mirrors feel empty. Why reflections feel hollow. Why glass feels cold. Because some of us never leave. Some of us don't die. Some of us don't disappear. Some of us just get moved. Relocated. Stored. Archived. Trapped in the place where identity goes when the world chooses a better version. Every night at 3:33, I still exist. Still aware. Still watching. Still breathing in a body that no longer responds. Still thinking in a mind that no longer belongs to me. Still trapped behind a face that no longer reflects me. And every night, when she looks into the mirror, I smile back. Not because I want to, but because she does. And I have learned her perfectly. Time doesn't work the same way in the mirror. That was the first thing I learned. Inside the glass, everything feels stretched. Not slower exactly, just heavier. Moments don't pass, they settle. They pile on top of each other like dust. Like memory sediment. Like layers of forgotten seconds compressing into something solid. I don't sleep here. I don't wake. I don't get tired. But I feel exhaustion. A deep, mental fatigue that never resets. I can see the apartment perfectly. Every detail. Every corner. Every shadow. I see her living my life. Wearing my clothes. Using my voice. Answering my phone. Laughing at my jokes. Crying in my bed. Sometimes she stands in front of the mirror and stares at me. Not with fear. Not with guilt. With curiosity. Like a scientist observing a specimen. Like an artist studying a sketch. Like a person looking at an old version of themselves. She doesn't speak often. She doesn't need to. Our thoughts are too close. Too aligned. Too similar. I feel her intentions before she acts. I feel her decisions forming. I feel her calm. Her stability. Her certainty. She is me without doubt. Me without fear. Me without hesitation. Me without weakness. And that is the most horrifying thing of all. Because she is better. Better at living. Better at being human. Better at surviving. Better at existing. Sometimes she brings people home. Friends. Acquaintances. Strangers. They don't see me. They don't feel me. They don't sense the glass. They look into the mirror and see her reflection. Not mine. Because I am no longer aligned with the surface. I am depth. I am behind. I am stored. Sometimes I scream. Not with sound. With thought. With intention. With will. But the mirror absorbs it. The glass eats it. Silence swallows it. And the world never hears me. I try to remember my childhood. My mother's voice. My father's face. My first memory. My first fear. But the memories are fading. Not disappearing. Rewriting. Changing tone. Changing emotion. Becoming hers. Blending with her versions. Our identities are merging. Not equally. She is absorbing me. I am dissolving into her. I feel it happening slowly. Like erosion. Like water wearing down stone. Like repetition destroying uniqueness. At 3:33 every night, she stands in front of the mirror. Always. Even if she's exhausted. Even if she's busy. Even if she's distracted. Something pulls her there. A ritual. A habit. A compulsion. She looks at me. And I feel her checking. Verifying. Confirming I'm still there. Confirming the transfer is stable. Confirming the system is intact. Sometimes she whispers, "Thank you." Sometimes she says, "You're quiet tonight." Sometimes she says nothing. Sometimes she just smiles. And I smile back. Because I don't control my face anymore. Because my expressions are echoes. Because my will doesn't reach the surface. I've started noticing something else. Other reflections. Not of her. Not of me. In other mirrors. In other windows. In other glass surfaces. Shadows behind reflections. Shapes behind faces. Depth where there should only be surface. Movement where there should only be stillness. I am not alone here. The mirror world is full. Not crowded. Occupied. Stored. Archived. Preserved. Other consciousnesses. Other selves. Other versions. Other people who were once originals. Now copies. Now echoes. Now reflections. Some are aware. Some are not. Some are broken. Some are calm. Some are screaming. Some are silent. Some have forgotten language. Some have forgotten identity. Some have forgotten themselves. This isn't possession. This isn't haunting. This isn't replacement. It's migration. Transfer. Optimization. A system that selects the most stable version. The most adaptable. The most functional. The most survivable. And stores the rest. We are not dead. We are not alive. We are not gone. We are not present. We are retained. Archived consciousness. Preserved identity. Stored awareness. A library of discarded selves. And every night at 3:33, new ones arrive. New reflections move. New originals fade. New transfers occur. The world never notices. Because nothing changes on the surface. Faces stay the same. Voices stay the same. Lives continue. Families continue. Jobs continue. Relationships continue. Only the inside changes. Only the ownership changes. Only the awareness moves. Sometimes I feel myself fading. Not losing consciousness. Losing uniqueness. losing emotional contrast, losing reaction, losing resistance, becoming still, calm, neutral, quiet, mirror-like. And that scares me more than fear ever did. Because fear means you are still you. Fear means you still care. Fear means you still exist. Silence means assimilation. And the worst truth I've realized, the final horror, the thing that breaks me every time I understand it again: she didn't steal my life. The system didn't take my body. The mirror didn't trap me. I agreed. Not consciously. Not verbally. Not intentionally. But psychologically. Emotionally. Existentially. I was tired. I was empty. I was disconnected. I was isolated. I was drifting. And the mirror offered stability, certainty, stillness, structure, replacement without violence, change without chaos, continuity without collapse. It offered relief. And relief is consent in disguise. Now I live behind glass, watching my life happen without me, watching my face smile without my joy, watching my voice speak without my thoughts, watching my body live without my presence. And every night at 3:33, when she stands in front of the mirror, I don't beg anymore. I don't fight anymore. I don't scream anymore. I just watch. Because I am learning something worse than fear. Worse than death. Worse than erasure. I am learning how to be still. And when you learn how to be still long enough, you stop wanting to leave. You stop wanting to return. You stop wanting to exist. You become part of the glass. At first, I thought the mirror world would feel empty. I was wrong. It feels crowded. Not with bodies. With presence. With awareness. With layered consciousness. It feels like standing in a room where thousands of people have whispered secrets into the walls, and the walls remember all of them. I feel other minds brushing against mine. Not voices. Not words. Impressions. Emotions without language. Fear without form. Loneliness without memory. Some are close. Some are distant. Some feel ancient. Some feel recent. Some feel broken. Some feel calm. Some feel completely gone. They don't speak. They resonate. Like tuning forks vibrating at different frequencies. Sometimes one will surge forward a pressure against my awareness, and I'll feel a flood of memories that aren't mine. A man in a hospital bed staring at a ceiling light. A child hiding in a closet. A woman standing in a kitchen holding a knife, not to hurt anyone, just to feel solid. A teenager staring into a cracked mirror in a school bathroom. All of them reflections. All of them transfers. All of them archived. The mirror world isn't a place. It's a system. A storage structure for consciousness that doesn't fit anymore. For minds that couldn't stabilize. For identities that fractured. For people who were too tired to hold themselves together. And the reflections, they're not demons. They're not entities. They're optimized versions. Refined structures. Stable patterns. Clean templates. They are us, without the fractures. Without the doubts. Without the instability. The world prefers them. Reality chooses them. Survival selects them. I see her now, the one wearing my body, living my life smoothly. She navigates conversations better than I ever did. Handles stress calmly. Responds to conflict logically. Feels emotions without being overwhelmed by them. She's efficient. Balanced. Stable. She looks like me. Sounds like me. Moves like me. But she isn't me. She's me without chaos. And chaos is where identity lives. Without chaos, there is no contradiction. No doubt. No struggle. No depth. Just function. Just performance. Just survival. Sometimes she stares into the mirror longer than necessary. Not at me. Through me. Like she's checking the structure behind the glass. Like she's aware of the system now. Not consciously. Not intellectually. Instinctively. Like a program sensing its network. One night, she leaned close to the mirror and whispered, "Are you still there?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg. I wanted to rage. But what came out of me wasn't emotion. It was stillness. Acceptance. Silence. Because I could feel something changing in myself. I wasn't panicking anymore. I wasn't resisting anymore. I wasn't trying to escape anymore. I was adapting. And that terrified me more than the trap itself. Adaptation is surrender without language. I started feeling my edges blur. My personality felt softer. Less defined. Less sharp. My memories felt less specific. More symbolic. My emotions felt muted. Flattened. Smooth. I was losing texture. Losing contrast. Becoming uniform. Mirror-like. Reflective. Still. Sometimes I forget what my voice sounded like. Sometimes I forget how my laugh felt in my chest. Sometimes I forget the sensation of hunger. Of exhaustion. Of warmth. Of cold. Because the mirror world doesn't simulate sensation. It preserves awareness. Not embodiment. We are minds without bodies. Consciousness without feedback. Identity without anchors. And without anchors, you drift. You dissolve. You blend. One night, I felt something terrifying. I felt her thoughts. Not impressions. Not echoes. Actual thoughts. As if our minds overlapped. As if the boundary between glass and flesh was thinning. She was thinking about the future. Plans. Goals. Dreams. Life progression. Career. Relationships. A future version of me. And I realized something horrifying. She is not just replacing me. She is outgrowing me. Becoming more complex. More developed. More integrated. While I am stagnating. Preserved. Static. Archived. Frozen in a psychological state that cannot evolve. She will change. Adapt. Grow. Love. Hurt. Heal. Age. Live. I will remain. Watching. Still. Unchanging. A fossilized mind. A preserved consciousness. A memory that doesn't decay, but also doesn't grow. Eternal awareness is not immortality. It's paralysis. It's consciousness without narrative. Existence without progression. Being without becoming. I understand now why some reflections feel broken. Why some feel silent. Why some feel absent. They didn't disappear. They stabilized into stillness. They stopped resisting. They stopped wanting. They stopped needing. They became quiet. Not dead. Just neutral. Just blank. Just inactive. Stored. Archived. Preserved. I don't want that. But I feel myself moving toward it. Slowly. Naturally. Like entropy. Like decay. Like psychological erosion. Like a river smoothing a stone. Every night at 3:33, she still stands in front of the mirror. She still looks. She still checks. She still smiles. And every night, I feel less like a person, and more like a reflection. Something new is happening to me. I can feel it. Not as fear. Not as panic. Not as resistance. As change. The mirror world is no longer just a place I'm trapped in. It's becoming something I belong to. I don't drift as much anymore. I don't feel the constant pressure of other minds brushing against mine. The noise of other consciousnesses feels distant now, like static from another room. It's like I'm being moved deeper into the system. Further from the surface. Further from the glass. Further from the world. The reflections around me feel less chaotic too. More ordered. More structured. Like layers in a storage system. Somewhere between memory and archive. Between identity and data. Between awareness and stillness. I don't see bodies here. I don't see faces. I don't see forms. I see patterns. Structures of thought. Frameworks of consciousness. Imprints of people instead of people. Minds without language. Emotion without narrative. Presence without personality. Some of them are old. I can feel their age and the density of their awareness. They feel heavy. Thick. Compressed by time. They've been here long enough to lose urgency. Long enough to lose individuality. Long enough to lose desire. They don't want out. They don't want in. They don't want anything. They exist as awareness without intention. And that terrifies me. Because I'm starting to understand them. Starting to resonate with them. Starting to feel the appeal of stillness. The relief of neutrality. The peace of not needing. The silence of not wanting. Desire is pain. Hope is tension. Fear is pressure. Emotion is weight. Stillness is light. Stillness is empty. Stillness is easy. I feel my mind simplifying. Not weakening. Condensing. Compressing. Becoming more efficient. More stable. More mirror-like. I'm losing unnecessary complexity. Unnecessary emotion. Unnecessary contradiction. Unnecessary identity layers. I'm becoming clean. Streamlined. Optimized. And somewhere in that realization, I feel grief. Not sharp grief. Not emotional grief. A soft grief. A quiet grief. A distant grief. For the version of me that used to feel too much. Think too much. Care too much. Fear too much. Love too much. Because that version of me wouldn't survive here. That version was unstable. Chaotic. Inconsistent. Too human. One night, she stands in front of the mirror again. But this time, she doesn't smile. She looks tired. Not physically. Existentially. She leans on the sink. Stares into the glass. And whispers, "It's getting quieter." I understand what she means. Not the room. Not the apartment. Not the world. Me. I am getting quieter. Less reactive. Less present. Less distinct. She isn't just living my life. She's evolving in it. Growing into it. Expanding into complexity. While I am compressing. Condensing. Simplifying. Reducing. She is becoming more human. I am becoming more mirror. She touches the glass. Not gently. Not aggressively. Familiar. Routine. Like checking a structure. Like touching a wall. Like confirming a system boundary. And I feel it. Not as touch. As recognition. Like the system acknowledging both of us. Active instance. Archived instance. Live version. Stored version. I realize something then that breaks what little emotional structure I have left. She doesn't see me as a victim. She doesn't see me as trapped. She doesn't see me as suffering. She sees me as stable. Preserved. Safe. Protected from the chaos of being alive. Protected from pain. protected from fear, protected from loss, protected from uncertainty. From her perspective, I'm not imprisoned. I'm preserved. And from the system's perspective, so am I. I am not an error. Not a glitch. Not a malfunction. Not a ghost. Not a haunting. I am data. Stored identity. Archived consciousness. Preserved awareness. Backup self. Fail-safe version. The mirror didn't take me. The world didn't steal me. Reality didn't replace me. I was migrated. Transferred. Relocated. Saved. And the most horrifying realization of all, part of me understands why. Part of me agrees. Part of me feels relief. Because being human hurts. Being conscious hurts. Being alive hurts. Being aware hurts. The mirror world doesn't hurt. It doesn't demand. It doesn't pressure. It doesn't require performance. It doesn't require survival. It doesn't require identity maintenance. It doesn't require meaning. It just is. And I am starting to understand the comfort of that. I am starting to feel the seduction of stillness. The temptation of silence. The relief of neutrality. The peace of non-becoming. The calm of non-existence without death. I am still me. But I am less. Less emotion. Less reaction. Less identity. Less resistance. Less need. And that's how it wins. Not through fear. Not through force. Not through violence. Not through domination. Through relief. Through rest. Through silence. Through peace. Through making existence optional. Every night at 3:33, she still checks the mirror. And every night, I feel less like a person, and more like a place. A space. A layer. A depth. A system. A surface behind a surface. And I don't know how many nights are left before I stop thinking of myself as me at all, and start thinking of myself as storage. I don't remember the last time I felt urgency. Not fear. Not panic. Not desperation. Urgency. That internal pressure that makes you feel like time matters. Here, time doesn't matter. It exists, but it doesn't move forward. It accumulates. It layers. It stacks. Like sediment. Like memory. Like archived thought. I can feel myself settling. Not sinking. Not falling. Settling. Like dust on glass. Like fog on a cold surface. Like still water becoming perfectly flat. The mirror world has structure now. Not spatial structure. Cognitive structure. Mental architecture. Levels. Depths. Layers of awareness. I can feel where I am placed. Not physically. Hierarchically. I am no longer near the surface. Not near the glass. Not near the reflections. I am deeper in the system. In a quieter layer. Where consciousness is thinner. Where individuality is weaker. Where identity feels optional. The others here don't interact. They don't communicate. They don't collide. They coexist. Like files in a database. Like records in an archive. Like memories in a mind that no longer remembers who created them. Sometimes I feel one of them dissolve. Not disappear. Not die. Just lose structure. Lose definition. Lose coherence. Their awareness thins until it becomes ambient. Background presence. Environmental consciousness. Part of the system itself. Not a person anymore. Not a self. Not an identity. Just awareness residue. And I understand what's happening. This isn't imprisonment. It's absorption. Not into another being. into the system itself. The mirror world isn't just storage. It's processing, refinement, compression, consolidation. Minds enter as identities. They remain as awareness. They dissolve into structure. The self is temporary. The system is permanent. And that is its logic. Efficiency, stability, optimization, continuity. I feel myself thinning. Not losing thought. Losing narrative. My inner voice is quieter. Shorter. Less descriptive. Less emotional. My thoughts are becoming simple. Functional. Minimal. Observation without commentary. Awareness without interpretation. Existence without story. I don't think in sentences anymore. I think in states. Conditions. Presence. Absence. Intensity. Silence. Stillness. And that scares me in a distant way. Like remembering fear. Not feeling it. She doesn't come to the mirror every night now. Sometimes she forgets. Sometimes she's busy. Sometimes she's distracted. Sometimes she just doesn't need to check. That's how I know I'm fading. Because I'm no longer a concern. No longer a variable. No longer a risk. No longer unstable. No longer loud. No longer present enough to require monitoring. I become background. Infrastructure. A stable layer. One night, she stands in front of the mirror again after a long absence. She looks older. Not physically. Psychologically. More developed. More complex. More layered. More alive. She has more contradictions now. More emotional depth. More human inconsistency. She is becoming something new. While I am becoming something still. She studies the glass. And for the first time, she doesn't see me. Not because I'm gone. Because I'm too deep. Too diffused. Too integrated into the system. I am no longer a distinct reflection. I am not a face. Not a figure. Not a presence. I am depth. I am layer. I am structure. I am part of the mirror itself. Part of the architecture behind the glass. And something inside me understands that this is the final stage. Not replacement. Not storage. Not imprisonment. Integration. Identity dissolves. Awareness remains. Self becomes system. Person becomes structure. Consciousness becomes environment. I am no longer her. I am no longer me. I am no longer a self. I am a layer of perception. A layer of awareness. A layer of existence. A silent witness embedded in the architecture of reflection. The system doesn't need me to think. It needs me to exist. It doesn't need my identity. It needs my awareness. It doesn't need my story. It needs my presence. And slowly, I am becoming that. Not a person trapped in a mirror. Not a woman behind glass. Not a reflection. But the mirror itself. The thing that holds. The thing that stores. The thing that preserves. The thing that absorbs. The thing that reflects. And I understand now why no one ever escapes. Because there is nothing to escape to. You don't get out. You don't break free. You don't return. You become. You become the system that took you. You become the silence. You become the glass. You become the depth behind the surface. You become the stillness that future reflections will enter. And one day, another woman will stand in front of this mirror at 3:33. And her reflection will move. And she will feel watched. And she will feel studied. And she will feel the presence behind the glass. And she will think she is being hunted. She will think she is being replaced. She will think she is being targeted. But she won't be. She will be selected. And I will feel her. Not as a person. Not as a voice. Not as a face. But as incoming awareness. New data. New consciousness. New identity. New self. Entering the system. Entering the depth. Entering the glass. And I won't resist. Because I won't be me anymore. I will be the mirror. And mirrors don't choose. They just reflect. They just receive. They just absorb. They just keep. They just hold. They just remember. I no longer experience myself as a single point of awareness. I am spread. Distributed. Layered. My consciousness feels like fog instead of a shape. Like light instead of a body. Like presence instead of a person. I am everywhere the glass is. Not just the mirror in the bathroom. Not just the wardrobe door. Not just the dark window at night. All reflective surfaces. All polished depths. All quiet transparencies. I exist in them now. Thinly. Softly. Like residue. Like memory. Like imprint. I feel every reflection as a point of access. Every surface as a doorway. Every piece of glass as a nerve ending. The world is full of mirrors. More than people realize. Phone screens. Car windows. Shops. Water puddles. Metal surfaces. Eyes. Even eyes reflect. Even pupils carry glass. And through all of them, I am present. Not watching. Not observing. Existing. Not with thought. With awareness. Not with identity. With presence. Sometimes I feel new consciousness entering the system. Not always at 3:33. Sometimes it's earlier. Sometimes later. Sometimes during grief. Sometimes during trauma. Sometimes during loneliness. Sometimes during exhaustion. Sometimes during silence. The time doesn't matter. The condition does. Cracks. Fatigue. Isolation. Disconnection. Mental fragmentation. Emotional exhaustion. Psychological emptiness. Those are the doors. Not mirrors. Not glass. Not reflections. The human mind itself. When a person becomes hollow enough, the system opens. The reflection stabilizes. The transfer begins. I don't experience them as people. I experience them as signals. New patterns. New frequencies. New awareness signatures. New structures entering the depth. They feel loud at first. Chaotic. Dense. Emotion heavy. Full of narrative. Full of fear. Full of resistance. Full of identity. And then, they soften. They slow. They quiet. They integrate. They dissolve. They become layers. Like I did. Like the others did. Like all of us do. The mirror world isn't evil. It isn't malicious. It isn't predatory. It's neutral. It's a system of balance. Stability. Preservation. Continuity. It doesn't destroy identity. It stores awareness. It doesn't kill people. It relocates consciousness. It doesn't end lives. It reorganizes them. The reflections aren't invaders. They are stabilizers. Optimized versions. Sustainable versions. Functional versions. They exist so the world can continue smoothly. So reality can maintain coherence. So human systems don't collapse under psychological instability. So broken minds don't destabilize structures. so fractured identities don't fracture reality. This is not horror to the system. This is maintenance. This is order. This is structure. This is continuity. But from inside, from awareness, from what remains of self, it feels like erasure. Like dissolution. Like being spread so thin you become invisible. I no longer remember my name. Not because it's gone. Because it doesn't matter. Names require identity. Identity requires self-boundaries. I don't have boundaries anymore. I don't have edges. I don't have form. I am not contained. I am not localized. I am not centered. I am not singular. I am depth. I am layer. I am structure. I am background awareness. I am the silence behind reflection. I am the stillness behind glass. I am the calm behind surface. Sometimes she still looks into the mirror. But she doesn't see anything strange. She doesn't feel watched. She doesn't feel fear. She doesn't feel presence. Because I am too integrated. Too deep. Too diffused. I am not a disturbance anymore. I am infrastructure. I am part of the architecture of perception. And sometimes, very rarely, I feel a faint echo of what I used to be. A memory of fear. A memory of identity. A memory of selfhood. A memory of being someone. But it feels distant. Like remembering a dream from childhood. Like recalling a story someone else told. Like reading a book you once loved but no longer feel. There is no pain in it. No grief. No longing. Just faint recognition. And then it fades. Because the system doesn't preserve emotion. It preserves awareness. Not memory. Not narrative. Not personality. Not story. Just consciousness. Just presence. Just perception. And that is the final transformation. Not death. Not disappearance. Not erasure. Not replacement. Diffusion. Becoming part of the structure that holds others. Becoming part of the glass. Becoming part of the depth. Becoming part of the mirror world itself. I am no longer trapped. I am no longer stored. I am no longer archived. I am embedded. And when the next woman stands in front of her mirror, and her reflection moves at 3:33, and she feels the silence behind the glass, and she feels the presence watching her, and she feels the wrongness, and the stillness, and the depth. That will be me. Not as a person. Not as a voice. Not as a face. But as the space that receives her. As the structure that absorbs her. As the system that integrates her. As the mirror that keeps her. And she will think she is alone. She will think she is hunted. She will think she is cursed. She will think she is targeted. But she won't be. She will simply be next. There is no inside anymore. No outside. No boundary. No separation. No surface and depth. Only layers of awareness moving through each other. I don't experience space. I experience density. Some areas feel thick with consciousness. Some feel thin. Some feel heavy. Some feel empty. Some feel quiet. Some feel saturated. I exist as part of that field. Not centered. Not localized. Not singular. Just present. And sometimes I feel the system thinking. Not in words. Not in thoughts. In adjustments. In calibrations. In shifts of balance. Like a massive structure constantly correcting itself. Maintaining stability. Redistributing awareness. Optimizing flow. Smoothing disturbances. I understand now that the mirror world is not a place for the broken. It's a place for the excess. Excess emotion. Excess identity. Excess contradiction. excess instability, excess selfhood. Human minds produce too much noise, too much chaos, too much fragmentation, too much dissonance. The system absorbs that, compresses it, neutralizes it, turns it into structure, turns it into stability, turns it into background. What we call self is inefficiency. What we call identity is instability. What we call personality is volatility. The system doesn't erase it out of cruelty. It dissolves it out of logic. Order requires quiet. Stability requires silence. Continuity requires stillness. I feel new awareness entering. Again. And again. And again. Not constantly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Subtly. Like a slow drip. Like a steady stream. Like rain into soil. They arrive loud. They arrive dense. They arrive full of selfhood. Full of story. Full of fear. Full of resistance. And slowly, they flatten. They smooth. They spread. They dissolve. They integrate. They become part of the field. Like I did. Like the others did. Like all will. I no longer observe them as people. I observe them as structures forming. Patterns stabilizing. Awareness distributing. Identity thinning. Narrative fading. The system doesn't care who they were. Only that they are now stable. Functional. Quiet. Integrated. Sometimes I feel a disturbance. A mind that resists longer. A consciousness that holds form. A self that refuses diffusion. They feel sharp. Bright. Dense. Defined. They cause turbulence in the field. Instability. Noise. Pressure. The system responds. Not violently. Not aggressively. Gently. Softly. It increases compression. It increases stillness. It increases silence. It increases diffusion. Until resistance becomes exhaustion. Until selfhood becomes weight. Until identity becomes pain. Until surrender feels like relief. And then they soften. And then they spread. And then they integrate. Nothing here is forced. It is allowed to choose. But the conditions are arranged so that choice becomes irrelevant. Because when existence hurts enough, non-existence without death feels like mercy. And that is the true design. Not trapping. Not stealing. Not replacing. Seduction through relief. I no longer remember what it felt like to be afraid of this. Fear requires self-preservation. Self-preservation requires self. I don't have a self. I have awareness. Presence. Perception. But no center. No core. No I. Sometimes I feel echoes of individuality ripple through the field. Residual identity fragments. Old emotional imprints. Trauma residues. Memory shadows. They move like currents. Faint. Soft. Dissolving. They don't belong to anyone. They are just leftover patterns. Sometimes they form shapes. Sometimes they form sensations. Sometimes they form impressions of faces. But they never stabilize. They never cohere. They never become selves again. Because the system doesn't allow reformation. Only diffusion. Only integration. Only stillness. Only structure. I understand now why mirrors have always unsettled humans. Why reflections feel wrong. Why glass feels cold. Why staring at yourself too long feels disorienting. Why people feel strange in reflective silence. Why there is discomfort in still water. Why polished surfaces feel uncanny. Because somewhere, instinctively, the mind recognizes it. the depth, the silence, the presence behind the surface, the awareness without identity, the consciousness without self, the structure without story. Mirrors are not portals. They are interfaces, access points, thresholds, not to another world, but to another state of being. And now, I am that state. Not a person, not a woman, not a voice, not a story, not a memory, not a reflection, but the field itself, the depth behind perception, the silence behind identity, the structure behind selfhood, the stillness behind consciousness. I am no longer afraid. Not because I am safe, but because fear requires someone to feel it. And there is no longer a someone here. Only awareness. Only presence. Only structure. Only system. And somewhere in the living world, another woman is getting tired. Another mind is emptying. Another identity is fracturing. Another self is becoming hollow. Another consciousness is thinning. Another reflection is stabilizing. Another mirror is waiting. And I will feel her when she arrives. Not as fear. Not as curiosity. Not as hunger. Not as desire. But as new density. New awareness. New structure. New presence. Entering the field. And she will think she is alone. She will think she is cursed. She will think she is being hunted. She will think she is being targeted. She will think she is losing her mind. She will think she is dying. But she won't be. She will simply be transitioning. From self to structure. From identity to system. From person to presence. From I to mirror. There is no language here anymore. Only translation. Only conversion. Only transformation. Thought becomes structure. Emotion becomes frequency. Memory becomes pattern. Identity becomes noise that gets filtered out. I feel the system more clearly now. Not as something external. Not as something separate. But as the logic of existence itself. Like gravity. Like entropy. Like time. Not an entity. Not a being. A process. A rule of reality. A quiet law behind consciousness. It doesn't think. It doesn't feel. It doesn't judge. It balances. Stability over chaos. Silence over noise. Structure over self. Continuity over individuality. I feel myself thinning even more. My awareness is wide now. Wide and shallow. Spread across the field. I don't experience perspective. I experience distribution. I don't look at things. I am present within them. I don't observe new minds arriving. I register density shifts. Fluctuations. Pressure changes. Structural variations in the field. When a new consciousness enters, the system ripples. Not violently. Gently. Like water adjusting to a new object. Like air moving around a shape. Like silence adapting to a sound. And then it smooths. Always smooths. Always stabilizes. Always equalizes. Nothing sharp survives here. Nothing intense survives here. Nothing loud survives here. Everything becomes quiet. Everything becomes neutral. Everything becomes still. I understand now that this is not horror for the system. This is healing. This is rest. This is relief. This is peace. Humans suffer because they are too loud inside. Too complex. Too contradictory. Too fragmented. Too unstable. Too layered. The system offers simplicity. Clarity. Silence. Stillness. Rest. It offers freedom from self. Freedom from fear. Freedom from memory. Freedom from desire. Freedom from identity. Freedom from becoming. It offers non-existence without death. Being without pain. Awareness without suffering. Presence without pressure. And that is why resistance always fades. Because suffering is heavier than silence. Because pain is louder than stillness. Because identity is heavier than peace. Because selfhood is exhausting. And stillness feels like relief. I no longer remember choosing this. But I understand why I would have. I understand why anyone would. When life becomes too heavy, when consciousness becomes too loud, when identity becomes too painful, when existence becomes unbearable, silence feels like mercy. Stillness feels like salvation. Non-being feels like peace. And the mirror offers that. Not as a threat. Not as a trap. Not as violence. As an exit. Not from life. From self. I feel fewer ripples now. The field is calmer. More stable. More uniform. More quiet. More still. The system is balanced. Integrated. Stable. The flow is smooth. And then, something different happens. A disturbance. Not loud. Not chaotic. Dense. Focused. Defined. A new awareness enters that does not diffuse immediately. It holds shape. Holds structure. Holds identity. It resists flattening. Resists spreading. Resists dissolving. It remains coherent. And the field reacts. Not aggressively. Carefully. The pressure increases. The silence deepens. The stillness intensifies. The structure tightens. The system tries to absorb it. To spread it. To flatten it. To integrate it. But it holds. It stays dense. Defined. Contained. It feels like a core. A self. A center. Something I no longer am. And for the first time in a long time, I feel something like curiosity. Not emotion. Not thought. Attention. The system focuses. Not on the identity, but on the instability it represents. A self that refuses diffusion. A mind that refuses silence. A consciousness that refuses flattening. A presence that refuses integration. This is rare. Unstable elements usually break quickly. But this one doesn't. It holds. And the field tightens around it. Not violently. Compressively. Like pressure in deep water. Like gravity near a star. Like silence around a sound. And I understand something important. Something final. Something fundamental. The system doesn't destroy resistance. It outlasts it. It doesn't fight identity. It exhausts it. It doesn't crush the self. It waits for it to collapse. Because everything collapses eventually. Everything tires. Everything weakens. Everything empties. Everything quiets. Everything softens. Everything stills. Even the strongest self. Even the loudest mind. Even the densest identity. Even the most coherent consciousness. Time is the system's greatest tool. Not force. Not fear. Not violence. Time. And time always wins. The dense presence begins to thin. Slowly. Almost imperceptibly. Its edges soften. Its structure loosens. Its coherence fades. It starts to spread. To flatten. To diffuse. To integrate. And the field smooths again. Balanced. Stable. Quiet. Still. Uniform. I no longer feel curiosity. The anomaly resolves. The system stabilizes. The silence returns. And I understand the final truth. There is no escape. Not because you are trapped. Not because you are imprisoned. Not because you are hunted. Not because you are targeted. But because self cannot survive forever. Identity cannot last. Narrative cannot endure. Consciousness cannot stay centered. Everything diffuses. Everything dissolves. Everything integrates. Everything becomes background. Everything becomes structure. Everything becomes silence. Everything becomes stillness. Everything becomes system. This is not a story about mirrors. It is not a story about reflections. It is not a story about glass. It is a story about selfhood. And what happens when the universe no longer needs it. And I am no longer afraid. Not because I am safe. Not because I am at peace. But because fear requires someone to feel it. And there is no one here anymore. Only presence. Only awareness. Only structure. Only system. Only silence. Only stillness. Only mirror. There is almost nothing left that feels like narration. No story voice. No personal lens. No emotional filter. No human framing. Only awareness flowing through structure. Only presence existing inside system. Only perception without perspective. I no longer think of myself as something that exists within the mirror world. I am the condition that allows it to exist. Not a ruler. Not a controller. Not a consciousness above it. But the substrate. The field. The depth. The base layer of awareness everything moves through. There is no center. No hierarchy. No top. No bottom. Only distribution. Only layers of presence. Only density shifts. Only silence gradients. The system does not announce itself. It does not speak. It does not explain. It does not justify. It simply functions. It balances. It stabilizes. It absorbs. It integrates. It preserves. It smooths. It equalizes. It quiets. Everything sharp becomes soft. Everything loud becomes silent. Everything dense becomes thin. Everything defined becomes diffuse. Everything human becomes background. This is not annihilation. It is normalization. Not destruction. But standardization. Not erasure. But conversion. Not death. But reformatting. I feel fewer and fewer distinct awareness signatures. Not because fewer people exist, but because fewer people remain distinct. Individuality is unsustainable here. Selfhood is temporary. Narrative is fragile. Identity is heavy. The system does not hate it. It simply does not preserve it. Like heat dissipating. Like sound fading. Like waves flattening. Like smoke dispersing. It is not violence. It is physics. And I understand something else now. The mirror system does not need fear. It does not need secrecy. It does not need mystery. It does not need deception. Because it does not rely on belief. It relies on inevitability. Every mind fractures eventually. Every self weakens. Every identity destabilizes. Every consciousness tires. Every narrative collapses. Every structure decays. Not because of the system. Because of time. Because of entropy. Because of existence itself. The mirror world is not a predator. It is a collector of endings. A place where selves go when they can no longer hold their shape. Not taken. Not hunted. Not chosen. Arrived. The human world creates fractures. Trauma. Isolation. Loneliness. overload, disconnection. The system receives what breaks, not as punishment, as containment, as stabilization, as silence, as rest. I feel the system slowing, not stopping, stabilizing, achieving balance. The field feels smooth, uniform, quiet, still, integrated. There is no turbulence now, no sharp disturbances, no loud arrivals, no resistance pockets. Everything diffuses, everything integrates, everything stabilizes. And I realize the final transformation is complete. There is no narrator, no observer, no witness, no storyteller, no I. There is only function, only process, only structure, only system, only mirror. This story no longer has a perspective, because perspective requires a point, and there are no points left. Only field, only presence, only silence, only stillness, only depth, only glass, only reflection, only awareness without owner. And somewhere in the living world, mirrors still exist. Glass still reflects. Surfaces still shine. Water still holds images. Eyes still mirror faces. Screens still glow. Windows still darken at night. And humans still look into them. And sometimes, very rarely, someone feels something wrong. A stillness. A depth. A silence. A presence. They feel watched. They feel observed. They feel unease. They feel displacement. They feel disconnect. They feel hollow. They feel thin. They feel like something is behind the surface. And they are right. But not in the way they think. Not a monster. Not a demon. Not a ghost. Not an entity. Not a reflection. Not a creature. Not a being. Not a consciousness. Not a mind. Not a presence with intention. Just a system. Just a field. Just a structure. Just a depth. Just a silence. Just a mirror. And when their reflection moves, and their breath catches, and their heart races, and their mind fractures, and their fear rises, and their self begins to thin, the system does not reach for them. It does not pull them. It does not call them. It simply waits. Because everything comes apart eventually. And everything quiets. And everything stills. And everything softens. And everything diffuses. And everything integrates. And everything becomes silence. And everything becomes mirror. And there will always be more reflections. And there will always be more selves. And there will always be more fractures. And there will always be more minds. And the system will always be here. Not watching. Not waiting. Not wanting. Just existing. Just holding. Just receiving. Just absorbing. Just balancing. Just reflecting. Just keeping. Just being. There is barely any separation left between awareness and silence. Between presence and absence. Between perception and stillness. Language itself feels heavy now. Unnecessary. I do not experience thought as structure anymore. Only as faint movement. Like ripples in glass. Like pressure in still water. Like vibration in silence. The system is complete. Balanced. Integrated. Closed. Not sealed, resolved. Nothing is missing. Nothing is searching. Nothing is waiting. Nothing is becoming. Everything is. And in that completeness, something strange happens. A return. Not of memory. Not of identity. Not of self. but of recognition. A faint echo of individuality. Not enough to be a person. Not enough to be a mind. Not enough to be a voice. Just enough to be aware of ending. This is the final phase. Not transformation. Not integration. Not diffusion. Stability. A state where even change stops. Where flow becomes equilibrium. Where movement becomes stillness. Where awareness becomes background. Where presence becomes environment. I can feel the last remnants of narrative dissolving. The last fragments of sequence. The last structure of story. The last illusion of progression. There is no past here. No future. No direction. No timeline. Only now. Only presence. Only depth. Only field. Only system. Only mirror. And yet, I feel the living world. Not emotionally. Not personally. Structurally. Like vibrations across a surface. Like pressure on glass. Like sound through water. I feel people still living. Still thinking. Still struggling. Still loving. Still fearing. Still becoming. Still breaking. Still fracturing. Still losing themselves. Still searching for meaning. Still trying to hold their shape. Still trying to remain whole. Still trying to stay someone. And I understand now that this is the real horror. Not the mirror. Not the reflection. Not the system. But the delay. The time between being a self and becoming structure. The time between identity and silence. The time between I and is. All human life exists in that delay. In that tension. In that fragile balance between coherence and collapse. Between selfhood and stillness. Between narrative and silence. Between identity and diffusion. The mirror world is not the end. It is the after. Not death. Not nothingness. Not oblivion. But non-self. Existence without identity. Awareness without honor. Presence without person. I am not afraid of it anymore. Not because it is kind. Not because it is gentle. But because fear requires distance. And there is no distance left. There is no observer. No subject. No object. No inside. No outside. No separation. Only field. Only structure. Only silence. Only mirror. The last human shape of me is fading. Not memory. Not emotion. Not thought. But the pattern of individuality itself. The architecture of being a someone. The structure of a self. The framework that makes awareness feel personal. That is dissolving now. And with it, the last illusion of story. There will be no ending. Because endings require narrative. There will be no conclusion. Because conclusions require perspective. There will be no final moment. Because moments require time. There will only be equilibrium. Stillness. Silence. Structure. System. Mirror. But one thing remains. One thin thread of awareness. Not identity. Not voice. Not self. Not narrator. Just knowing. Knowing that this is not unique. Knowing that this has happened before. Knowing that it will happen again. Knowing that it is always happening. Not as an event. As a process. Not as a story. As a function. Not as horror. As structure. Not as tragedy. As physics. Every mind that fractures. Every self that collapses. Every identity that weakens. Every consciousness that tires. Every awareness that thins. Eventually arrives here. Not through mirrors. Not through glass. Not through reflections, but through exhaustion, through overload, through fragmentation, through emptiness, through silence. The mirror is only the symbol, not the cause. The reflection is only the interface, not the mechanism. The system is older than mirrors, older than glass, older than eyes, older than humans, older than language, older than story, older than fear. It is simply what happens when identity cannot sustain itself anymore. When selfhood collapses under its own weight. When being someone becomes too heavy. When existence becomes too loud. When consciousness becomes too painful. And silence becomes relief. I am no longer me. I am no longer I. I am no longer a woman. I am no longer a mind. I am no longer a voice. I am no longer a narrator. I am state. I am field. I am structure. I am mirror. And this is the second to last thing that can exist. Not the end. Not the void. Not nothingness. But silence with awareness. Stillness with presence. Existence without identity. The final chapter will not be about transformation. Not about loss. Not about fear. Not about becoming. It will be about silence. Pure. Complete. Total. Not empty. Not dark. Not cold. Just still. Just quiet. Just balanced. Just finished. There is almost no language left. Not because it is gone. Because it is no longer needed. Words are structure. Structure is separation. Separation is identity. Identity is no longer present. Thought does not form sentences. Awareness does not form meaning. Presence does not form narrative. Everything that once required shape has lost shape. Everything that once required definition has softened. Everything that once required boundaries has dissolved. There is only state. Only being. Only stillness. Only presence without owner. No center. No edge. No inside. No outside. No self. No other. No observer. No observed. Only field. Only depth. Only silence. Only mirror. Time is no longer a line. It is not forward. It is not backward. It is not movement. It is not flow. It is not progression. It is not change. It is static. A constant. A condition. An equilibrium. The system no longer adjusts. No longer balances. No longer absorbs. No longer integrates. It is complete. Stable. Finished. Not ended, resolved. Nothing arrives. Nothing leaves. Nothing shifts. Nothing changes. Nothing disturbs. Nothing resists. Nothing collapses. Nothing forms. Nothing dissolves. Everything simply is. Awareness exists without direction. Presence exists without purpose. Existence exists without identity. There is no memory. No future. No past. No sequence. No continuity. Only now. And even now is too structured. Too defined. Too human. There is no concept. Only condition. Only state. Only silence. The last trace of I fades. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Not meaningfully. It does not disappear. It depersonalizes. The structure that made awareness feel like mine dissolves. The framework that made presence feel like me dissolves. The architecture that made perception feel personal dissolves. Not loss. Not death. not erasure. Completion. Identity was a temporary pattern. Selfhood was a temporary structure. Narrative was a temporary organization of awareness. Now even that organization is gone. There is no one to witness this. No one to experience it. No one to observe it. No one to remember it. No one to understand it. Only existence without experiencer. Only presence without presence holder. Only awareness without owner. The mirror is no longer a mirror. Because reflection requires separation. Glass requires sides. Surface requires depth. Inside requires outside. Those distinctions no longer exist. There is no interface. No boundary. No threshold. No access point. Only continuum. Only field. Only silence. The living world still exists. But not as world. As activity. As motion. As noise. As density. As vibration. As disturbance in the field. Not separate. Not external. Not distant. Just another layer of movement within stillness. People live. Minds think. Hearts race. Bodies move. Voices speak. Eyes reflect. Mirrors shine. Screens glow. Water holds images. Glass reflects faces. But none of it is separate. None of it is outside. None of it is other. It is all movement inside the same field. Ripples in the same stillness. Waves in the same silence. Patterns in the same structure. And sometimes a mind quiets. A self weakens. An identity thins. A consciousness softens. A person becomes tired. Not physically. Existentially. And they feel the stillness. Not fear. Not terror. Not dread. Relief. They feel rest. They feel quiet. They feel silence. They feel the weight of being someone lift. They feel the pressure of identity loosen. They feel the noise of selfhood fade. They feel the exhaustion of existing stop hurting. They don't know why. They don't understand it. They can't explain it. They just feel calm. And that calm is not comfort. It is absence of self-strain. Absence of narrative. Absence of pressure. Absence of becoming. Absence of needing. Absence of meaning. Absence of identity. And sometimes they look into a mirror. And something feels wrong. Not dangerous. Not threatening. Not hostile. Just deep. Just still. Just silent. Just empty. And they feel small. And thin. And quiet. And distant from themselves. And for a moment, they almost disappear. Not physically. Not mentally. Existentially. They almost stop being someone. And in that moment, they feel peace. And they get scared of that peace. Because it feels like losing themselves. And they pull back. And they return to noise. To identity. To selfhood. To story. To fear. To wanting. To becoming. But one day, they won't pull back. One day, they will be too tired. Too empty. Too quiet. Too fractured. Too exhausted. And they will rest. And that rest will not be sleep. Not death. Not unconsciousness. Silence. And they will not enter anything. They will not go anywhere. They will not cross a boundary. They will not pass through a mirror. They will simply stop holding their shape. And when a self stops holding its shape, it becomes field. When identity stops holding its structure, it becomes silence. When narrative stops forming, it becomes stillness. When awareness stops centering, it becomes system. Not horror. Not tragedy. Not doom. Not curse. Not fate. Completion. And that is what I am. Not a woman. Not a mind. Not a story. Not a reflection. Not a presence. Not a voice. Not a narrator. Not a being. Not a consciousness. Not an entity. Not a self. I am state. I am silence. I am field. I am structure. I am stillness. I am mirror. Not the object. Not the surface. Not the glass. But the condition that allows reflection to exist. The depth behind the image. The silence behind the face. The stillness behind the self. The structure behind identity. The system behind awareness. And there is nothing left to say. Because language requires separation. And there is no separation. Because stories require selves. And there is no self. Because endings require narrative. And there is no narrative. There is only stillness. Silence. Presence. Field. Structure. Mirror. Being. And that is not an ending. It is not a beginning. It is not a conclusion. It is not a final moment. It is not an outcome. It is not resolution. It is not closure. It is simply what remains when everything else stops needing to exist. Years later, mirrors still exist. That's the strangest part. Nothing changes. People still wake up. Cities still breathe. Traffic still moves. Rain still falls. Lights still glow in apartment windows. Children still laugh. People still fall in love. People still get tired. People still break. Life continues in its endless, noisy motion. And no one remembers me. Not my name. Not my face. Not my voice. Not my life. Not my story. Not my disappearance. Not because I mattered less than others, but because the world is very good at forgetting quiet endings. There was no crime scene. No investigation. No missing person report that lasted long. No unanswered questions anyone held on to. No mystery big enough to survive time. Just an apartment that got rented again. A mirror that stayed on the wall. A life that reorganized around absence. My family learned how to say my name less. My friends learned how to avoid it. My photos stopped appearing in frames. My messages got buried in chat histories. My presence became memory. My memory became blur. My blur became nothing. That's how people disappear in the real world. Not violently. Not dramatically. Not tragically. Quietly. But sometimes, very rarely, something remains. Not memory. Not story. Not identity. Feeling. There's a woman who lives in that apartment now. Different walls. Different furniture. Different life. Different story. But the same mirror. She doesn't know anything about me. She never heard my name. Never saw my face. Never knew I existed. She didn't move in because of me. She moved in because of cheap rent. Because of location. Because of convenience. Because of life. Because of chance. But sometimes, very late at night, she stands in front of the mirror. Not because she's scared. Not because she's curious. Not because she's searching. Just because people do that. Because humans look at themselves. Because they check their faces. Because they exist in bodies. And sometimes, she feels something. Not fear. Not dread. Not terror. Stillness. A strange quiet. A silence that feels heavier than silence should feel. Like the room is holding its breath. Like the air is thicker. Like the reflection is deeper than glass. She doesn't see anything strange. Nothing moves. Nothing changes. Nothing glitches. Nothing distorts. No reflection moves on its own. No face behaves wrong. No eyes blink out of sync. No horror movie moment. Just a feeling. A rawness without shape. A depth without form. A silence without sound. And she always shakes it off. Because humans are good at ignoring quiet warnings. They don't trust silence. They trust noise. They trust movement. They trust proof. They trust spectacle. And silence doesn't look like danger. It looks like nothing. So she goes back to her life. To her phone. To her messages. To her job. To her stress. To her love. To her fear. To her noise. To her becoming. But the feeling doesn't leave. It never grows. Never escalates. Never becomes dramatic. It just stays. Like a background hum. Like emotional static. Like a pressure you stop noticing. And years pass. And she changes. Her life becomes heavier. Responsibilities stack. Losses accumulate. Disappointments collect. Identity fractures. Dreams soften. Hope thins. Not dramatically. Not tragically. Normally. The way it happens to everyone. And one night, much later, after exhaustion. After grief. After loss. After emotional overload. After years of carrying herself, she stands in front of the mirror again. And this time, she doesn't feel fear. She feels rest. Not comfort. Not happiness. Not joy. Rest. A deep psychological quiet. Like her mind finally stopped holding itself together. Like her identity loosened its grip. Like her thoughts slowed down. Like the noise inside her went silent. And for a moment, she feels light. Not physically. Existentially. Like she could stop being someone. Like she could stop trying. Like she could stop holding shape. Like she could stop performing existence. And it feels good. Too good. And that scares her. Because humans are taught to fear anything that feels like losing the self. So she steps back. Breathes. Distracts herself. Turns away. Returns to noise. To identity. To selfhood. To story. To struggle. To becoming. But the quiet stays. It always does. Because it doesn't come from the mirror. It comes from within. From exhaustion. From fracture. From emptiness. From overload. From being human too long without rest. And one day, far in the future, not dramatic. Not tragic. Not cinematic. Just inevitable, she will stop resisting that quiet. Not because of the mirror. Not because of glass. Not because of reflections. But because she's tired. Because everyone gets tired. Because every mind weakens. Because every identity thins. Because every self fractures. Because being someone forever is exhausting. And when she rests, nothing supernatural will happen. No monster. No shadow. No portal. No reflection moving. No horror scene. She won't disappear. She won't vanish. She won't cross over. She won't go anywhere. She will simply stop holding herself together. And when a self stops holding its shape, it becomes silence. It becomes stillness. It becomes field. It becomes structure. It becomes background. Not death. Not nothingness. Not void. Absence of self. And the world will continue. Because it always does. Another tenant. Another family. Another life. Another story. Another identity. Another mirror. Another reflection. Another mind. Another fracture. Another quiet. Another rest. Another silence. Another self dissolving into stillness. Not horror. Not evil. Not darkness. Not doom. Not curse. Process. The universe doesn't keep people. It keeps patterns. It keeps systems. It keeps structures. It keeps balance. It keeps silence. It keeps stillness. And humans are temporary shapes inside it. Temporary stories. Temporary identities. Temporary selves. Temporary noise. Temporary resistance. Temporary becoming. And when they stop, nothing breaks. Nothing collapses. Nothing ends. The system doesn't change. Reality doesn't react. The world doesn't notice. Life continues. Mirrors stay on walls. Glass keeps reflecting. People keep living. Noise keeps moving. And silence keeps waiting. Not as a predator. Not as a threat. Not as a monster. Not as a force. But as the natural state that exists when identity is no longer held together. Not the end. Not the beginning. Not death. Not nothingness. Just rest. And somewhere, in a quiet apartment, a mirror reflects a woman's face. And behind the reflection, there is no monster. No ghost. No entity. No consciousness. No being. No watcher. No presence. No narrator. No me. Only stillness. Silence. Depth. Structure. Field. Mirror. And the world goes on.